Um, just about almost 3 years ago, 2.5, 3 years ago, as we were in the run-up for Summer Machaneh, our keynote speaker gave me a phone call, called me up, and basically said, Ravar, we need to, it's important to change the dialogue, it's important to, all the things that we just spoke about over the past half an hour, it's really important to start bringing those things into the forefront. First of all, on personal for myself, Joe has literally opened up my eyes to the relevance, to the importance, to the centrality of focusing in on the messages that we've been teaching and discussing. In terms of where we are in terms of Bnei Akiva and the movement, we sat through many meetings with Joe discussing what can be done, what should be done, what's the ideal, how do we get to that ideal, beyond Joe's a Bulgarian, what should it? Shvut, very nice. The old times. Beyond being a Bulgarian of Bnei Akiva, and who's been influential in guiding us in kind of as again I said myself, but ourselves as a movement, is also very, very active in terms of LGBT plus awareness, the importance of inclusivity in the Jewish community here at large, in a way which is respectful, not looking to make statements or making headlines. Joe's personal qualities shine through in all his communal endeavors, in a way which is humble and out of true motivation for all the values that we spoke about before, and also does tremendous work helping and providing unique insight to young people who have questions of their own, and so we're really happy that Joe was able to come and to address us this evening. Johan.
Hi everyone. Thanks, Rav Ari. I mean, his work, his support over the past 3 years and changing things in Bnei Akiva has been incredible. As well as thank you to Joe and Dina and the rest of the Mazkirut for welcoming me here to speak about myself for the next kind of half an hour. It's not too long, so don't worry. So for all those who don't know me, I'm Joe Hyman. I'm really excited to be talking about this issue here at the Bayit. It's been a long time coming, and it's really quite exciting. You may ask, why am I doing this session? So many people speak about orthodoxy and homosexuality, but no one sees that these are people behind the issue. According to the Office for National Statistics, there are around 1.5% of people in the UK that identify as gay, lesbian, or bisexual, not including those who aren't out and identify as transgender. Based on this statistic, about 4,000 Jewish people in the UK identify as LGBT. And again, that's the people that are open about it, and not those ones who are still keeping it from other people. And not only this, but in 2012, a study in Israel found that the highest rate of suicide is amongst the gay Orthodox community. So how can we ignore the cry of one Jew, let alone thousands of Jewish people in our community? Can we continue to pretend that people don't exist, that they don't matter, their lives aren't important? I hope that tonight I can give you an insight into why this matter is important through showing my personal experiences and my hopes for the community, and hopefully reframing the conversation around Judaism and homosexuality. So during my first year of studying at Leeds, I came across a video online of a panel from Yeshiva University called Being Gay in the Modern Orthodox World. There were 3 separate panelists. Each got up and spoke about their experiences and realities, and seeing these 20-something Jews speak about their lives was a huge defining moment in my life. You see, I had thought about my sexuality every single day. I thought I understood it, but I'd never seen this part of me manifested in actual people. And seeing this video allowed me to realize that there was hope for a young 24-year-old, almost 25 in a couple of weeks. Please, some messages. Here, plainly on the internet, these three courageous young Jews who are a living testament that I, a modern Orthodox boy from Edgware, could live as a gay and Orthodox Jew. And not just any life, but a fulfilled and authentic one. But you know, while that was an incredible step in my journey, to the point where I can stand in front of you all tonight, it would be disingenuous not to share the rest of the story. The times when that moment felt like it was never coming. I would go to sleep one evening and hope that when I woke up, God would have changed me and a miracle would have happened and I'd be like everyone else and have an easy life. Well, as I've gotten older, I've realised that an easy life isn't really a reality for anybody, and everybody's given their own challenges and things to overcome. And it happened that being grappling between gay and Orthodox was the challenge that I had to deal with. And hopefully end up not just dealing with it, but flourishing with both these identities. While that thought seems obvious to some, I think it's important for young LGBT Jews to realise that even though life may be difficult to come out, or... Sorry, I've got my pages in the wrong order. Great, found it. Even though life may be difficult, that there is hope, and if we create a space for LGBT Jews in the community, we can make a space for everybody together. Now, I'd like to share my personal story with you in an attempt to give you an insight into growing up gay in the community. I want to make it clear that this is one story, and everyone's experiences are different, but I hope in sharing mine I can highlight the issues I faced while growing up with this double identity. I realised I was different at a very young age. It was not till sometime in primary school that I had heard the word gay, let alone in secondary school, before I realised the difference that I felt all this time was that I was actually gay. It took me almost 7 years to actually come out to my parents for the first time, and another 4 whole years to accept myself and come out as a gay Orthodox Jew to my family and friends. Throughout this time, I lived my life following the trajectory of most young Orthodox Jews, going to Jewish primary and secondary schools, BA, spending a year on Hachshara, Eretz Hatzvi, and we don't realise that in our community so many people follow this trajectory, but underlying that, many people are feeling these feelings or experiencing difficult times, and we have to be kind of careful about how we use our language and sensitivity, etc. So underlying all these stages in my life, there was always a discomfort that I felt. This discomfort was often disguised in the issues of the day. But when these issues were resolved, this discomfort always stayed. I felt like I needed to address my homosexuality as if it was just another problem I had to deal with. So what do we do these days when we have a problem? We Google it. And I found Jonah. And many of you have heard about Jonah, but for those who don't know, Jonah was a therapy organisation that attempted to alter people's sexuality through a form of reparative therapy. I read through every single article on their website and was convinced that this was the solution to all these years of feeling different and uncomfortable. It just felt right for me and made sense to a young Jewish teenager who loved his Judaism passionately and a bit obsessively at the time, and felt he had to change to align with its teachings. At that time I felt God wouldn't have created me with something that I couldn't change about myself. So this was the solution. I told my parents, and they reluctantly allowed me to give it a go. I spent 2 whole years in therapy at quite a large cost, each session speaking to my American therapist over the phone, and actually feeling better after it. I felt hopeful for a long time, and I learned a lot about myself and gender and sexuality in general. So it wasn't terrible, but my sexuality wasn't changing. And the original positive effect I felt began to fade away quite quickly. I began to feel apathetic, repressed, and hopeless that there was any solution to this issue. I stopped the therapy halfway through my time at yeshiva, and just tried to live life and ignore it. I want to say clearly that this type of therapy should never be recommended or forced onto struggling LGBT Jews. It doesn't work. The organisation has been found guilty of fraud, and many have spoken out about abuse during their time in therapy. And now an increasing amount of Orthodox rabbis have banned it. The years following the therapy were pretty difficult, and it took me a while to realise that this wasn't going away, and I couldn't just ignore it. I didn't feel in sync with myself. That feeling of discomfort became not just a symptom of how I felt, but my whole existence. That it was affecting my university work, my relationships with my friends, and I want to stress that this wasn't just a feeling that was going away or could have been resolved with a hug, or as many recommended at the time, trying to go out with a girl. It felt like I was pushing against the tide all the time, desperately trying to come across like everybody else. Every time I would think, oh, that guy's attractive, my mood would just change, and I became increasingly critical of myself for this basic emotion. But I was stuck. No more therapy to get me out of this, and not a chance I was going to tell anybody else. So at this point, my best friend was the only person who knew outside of my family, and despite his constant loving support, it began to become hard on our friendship. I had this issue that felt like it was never going to be resolved. This is what it felt to live a life that wasn't authentic, and at this point of the process I began to actually accept that I was gay. You see, something that I've learned is that it took a huge amount of time, about 21 years to be exact, to fully accept myself and love myself. And it's important to realise that that time is also needed by others, to accept you and grow to love you as the best version of yourself, whatever the situation you're in. So after a few years of conventional therapy and support from those around me, I began to share my sexuality with my immediate family and close friends. Coming out was, and is, one of the most difficult things I've had to do in my whole life. And it never ever ends. But thank God, I've been blessed to have a group of friends and family who embraced me and accepted this part of me. But it didn't happen immediately. It took time for my parents and family to accept that I was gay. After a number of years, they became more comfortable and accepted me for who I was. It was thanks to a number of close rabbis, including Rav Ari, and friends, that I got through this as well as my family. This all took time, and not because of their lack of love for me, but because it's hard for a parent to see their child in a difficult situation, in pain, to see that their children have difficult lives, or that the community won't accept them, or worse, there's dangers ahead of them. That's why it's so important for me to stress that we have to create a safe and loving community for the next generation. It's by no means the norm that families accept their children as LGBT. So it's important to absorb that this session isn't just an abstract discussion. It's not just a kind of talk you come to at B'nai Akiva and go home. It's a discussion about our friends, our siblings, and our community. It's no longer acceptable to just talk about them. This is about us. And I'd like to present to you what I think our community needs to do to ensure that the next generation of LGBT Jews feel like an us and not a them. I think at this point it's important that I answer the question that I get asked by most new people I meet and close friends. How do you reconcile orthodoxy and homosexuality? As you've heard from my story, being in the closet affected my mental health significantly and in turn affected my physical health. I'd like to say outrightly that I value my physical and mental health over halacha and the values of the Torah. I truly believe that to be the best Jew I can be, I need to be as healthy as I can, in all ways. And I'd like to make it clear that I don't think being gay is a choice in any way. I believe that accepting my sexuality and living an authentic life will make me a better Jew and a better member of our community. I believe that having a physical and emotional relationship with my future husband is vital to my mental and physical health, and to try and ignore my sexuality would be detrimental to both of those identities. I believe that there are 613 mitzvot, and that I can't fulfill all of them. I'm not a Kohen or a Levi, and I'm not straight. I will be as any other Jew, trying their best to live a life in accordance with the Torah and bring up children who have these same values. These are two things that are part of me, and I can't avoid them without the other being adversely affected. Now, the Jewish community worldwide have been doing some incredible work over the past few years to ensure that LGBT Jews feel part of our community. There have been public letters signed by rabbis in America, YouTube videos of young LGBT Jews speaking out about their experiences, and in our own country and community we've seen many rabbis and communities engage with Keshet's fantastic inclusivity training, including B'nai Akiva. These are all fantastic steps toward creating a space and a community where Orthodox gay Jews feel welcome and supported. But the conversation gets stuck here. And I'd like to suggest how we can move it forward. I'd like to give some practical pointers of how we can improve. I can appreciate it's hard for people to relate to these issues, and from my experiences, this is what I think would have helped me as a young teenager. The areas that I think we need to focus on are the language we use, the absent voice of the rabbinate and madruchim, and the halacha the line between halacha and homophobia. So, the language we use. Some would say that it's an imposition on the language that we use, and it's just political correctness gone mad. But I want to share with you a short story that actually happened on Israel Machana when I was 16, trying to make new friends and fit in after being a relatively awkward young teenager. I can't remember where it was or who said it, but someone said, and it sounds arbitrary and ridiculous, but that's so gay. And while the sentence didn't sound kind of insulting, quite innocuous, I went bright red. And I don't think anybody noticed, and if they did, they didn't respond at the time. But for the rest of my time on tour, I felt a deep embarrassment and shame. Someone may find out I'm gay, and even more, associated with negativity. When we use these words like gay or queer in a negative or derogatory way, we deeply affect people's confidence and self-worth, and it has to stop. But there is one word that hurts the most, and is the most common within our own Jewish community. That word is abomination. It's the one word that I honestly don't understand why people still use. The Gemara explains an explanation of the meaning of this word. It explains that the word to'eva, commonly translated as abomination, is a contraction of the phrase to'e ataba, you are straying with this. In short, the idea that being anything associated with this word is to be seen as a deviation from the perceived norm of society. In this case, intimacy between a man and a woman is the norm. But this is not the only time the word to'eva is used to describe something against the Torah's teachings. It has been mentioned in reference to intimacy between a married couple when the wife is in menstruation, and in discussions of kashrut. I mention this because not only should we be not using the word abomination, but we certainly don't speak of the people in these situations as abominations. We tend to see everybody as a whole person within a set of particular circumstances that we don't judge because we haven't stepped into their shoes, except if they are gay. And then they're an abomination. And that's it. I've been to countless shiurim and lectures on Lashon Hara, evil speech, but not one that mentioned the way we speak of our LGBT brothers and sisters. Our community has the ability to change the way we use language in general. So why can't we stop using this horrendous word? You see, this discussion isn't just about one word or language. I think it points to the crux of the issue. That the Orthodox community singles out the prohibition of sexual relations between two men over any other prohibitions in the Torah. So much so that this manifests in many ways where even though the rabbi may be saying it's the act and not the person ends up excluded from shul, their school, and worst of all, their family home. We need to be aware of the language we use and the power it has. If you take anything from this lecture tonight, please be aware of the language you use and the power it has. Spend a couple of seconds before you're going to use the word gay as a negative or casually say that gay people are abominations, as people do. Think about the person, your brother or sister or parent who could be sitting next to you or passing by that hears those words like a stab right in the heart. As I said, I think the issue of language points to this greater issue of a double standard in the way gay Jews are treated compared to their straight peers. The Torah is very damning about the act of sexual relations between two men. But I'd like to stress that the prohibition is very specific. This law doesn't decree that gay couples can't be involved in their community, take leadership roles, or that gay couples can't be involved in their community. Sorry, I repeated that. Take leadership roles or bring children on Shabbat. But some see this prohibition as a carte blanche to treat gay Jews how they please and use halacha as the justification for homophobia. I want to be clear, I'm not a halachic expert in any way or form, but I'd like to point out certain scenarios where I think the line between halacha and homophobia gets blurred. As a practicing Orthodox Jew, I occasionally get the honor of being called up to the Torah, a scenario that isn't as common as it should be. In the process of researching this particular topic, I found a lot of shuls actually do give communal responsibilities to openly gay members. But my worries are about the future. I'm blessed to go to a number of young minyanim and synagogues that give me this special honor. But will this continue if I bring my religious spouse to shul? Or bring my adopted children to shul? Will they be allowed to convert if they aren't halakhically Jewish? Or will my identity begin to dictate my acceptance and not my actions? I think this double standard needs to change. There are members of every community who openly break the Jewish law. But I worry that only gay people will be the ones who are excluded due to something that they cannot control. This is something specifically related to United Synagogues and other modern Orthodox communities where a lot of people in the communities don't keep Shabbat or Kashrut, but are still called up to the Torah or given mitzvot. It's these moments in Jewish life that I think everyone needs to improve on. Times when we're excluded just for being who we are. This part of my identity doesn't nullify the rest of my good deeds. It's time that the rabbis and members of our community start treating LGBT Jews with equal respect that they deserve. Orthodox gay people aren't publicly violating the laws regarding same-sex relations by attending shacharit on Shabbat with their partners and children. And it's not a public declaration of sin. If anything, attending is a public declaration of love, a deep love for Judaism, and an honest attempt to connect to God. These examples of same-sex families being excluded from our communities point to this double standard in the way we treat people in our community. And this is what needs to change. I'm not asking that a rabbi publicly declare that sex between two men is permissible. I'm asking that when I do choose to become a member of your shul, or my future children apply to one of your schools, that you treat me with the same respect as all other Jews in the community. Now, on the topic of rabbis, and this excludes Rav Ari and a number of rabbis that have supported me through this journey, I think it's important to speak about the deafening silence from the rabbinate on this issue. As a passionately halachic Jew, I relate to the concerns and constraints of our halachic system, but I don't think that concerns over halakha take precedence over the value of Jewish life. I think that we as a community have a responsibility to speak out for LGBT Jews, but our rabbis need to break their silence. As far as I'm aware, there are a large number of rabbis who are speaking about these issues privately, but they need to be including them in their Divrei Torah and speaking about them from the pulpit. I understand that different communities have different philosophies, and that some may need to accept the actual existence of LGBT people to begin with, and see the humanity behind this issue. But, as I've said before, I think the halachic concerns of the rabbinate get mixed up with homophobia. It's important to note that all Jews were created in the image of God, not just the ones that you agree with. Rabbis need to be making a statement that LGBT members of our community are welcome to pray in their shuls, with their families, and that all Jews striving to connect have a place in our community. Some may have concern that this outright acceptance would encourage more people to come out, or become gay, as people say. But I want to assure everyone here that the only thing I believe will happen if rabbis publicly welcome LGBT Jews into their communities is that more Jewish people will feel engaged and committed to their religion and community, and not feel ostracized because it's not a choice. Now, wouldn't that be nice? Even if a rabbi feels uncomfortable welcoming LGBT Jews to their community, wouldn't it be nice if they could use their pulpit on Shabbat Acharei Mot Kedoshim to denounce homophobia in the community, or address the halachic issues surrounding sexuality regardless of their opinion? I think it's time that the community realize that it can't affect people's sexuality, but it can affect whether they stay within the community and engage with Judaism. Steps like these taken by rabbis, and by the way also by madruchim and roshim on camp, would create a space that Jews struggling with their sexuality feel comfortable in, and can turn a whole generation of Jews that are leaving our community to come back and return home. So I've shared my personal story. I've addressed the issues that I think our community need to deal with. I'd like to end by saying thank you to Rav Ari, thanks to Joe Boxer, Dina Schwartz and the Maskira. It's honestly incredible to be speaking at the Bayit. Can't really believe it. Without their support, I honestly wouldn't be the person I am today, and I'm still in B'nai Akiva and involved. And I think that this support and great kind of care gives me the hope that our community can change. And really don't take this talk as just something kind of to hear about. Please call your rabbis, call your friends, tell them about it, bring it up in conversation at the Shabbat table. Tell your children, and families that they can talk about being LGBT without the fear of rejection. And if we can treat people struggling with their sexual identity as our friends, siblings, and families, and not as an abstract issue that needs to be solved, then maybe we can ensure that they are part of the us and don't feel like they're them. Thank you. Great. Questions?
Hey, so I'm going to be kind of directly related to the example you gave of the incident on your Israel Machaneh.
Yeah.
I'm going to be taking Israel Machaneh this summer, and I kind of would like to know what would have been an appropriate, a comforting, a supportive response from a madrich at the scene if such language is used.
I don't think I can give you the perfect response to give. And probably we can chat about it afterwards in terms of kind of exactly what I think you should say, but it's really not my expertise. But I just think to start talking about it before it's even kind of discussed would be a great thing. To have a share about it on tour, to address the issues on tour. These kids are at that age where they're thinking about these things, talking about these things, and just to address that from the outset as a topic of conversation that the madruchim feel comfortable about to begin with would dissipate a lot of the issues. And also just teach them about it, because a lot of people don't realise what they're saying is negative, but it still hurts people, it still makes them feel uncomfortable, it still ruins their experience on B'nai Akiva. So I think, just break the silence, throw into conversation, casually, in a positive way, reinforce that and make sure that people feel welcome, and maybe make a statement to your kids at the beginning about how people are welcome to come out, whatever it is, on your tour group. Anybody else?
You asked me to ask you, how can that take place in B'nai Akiva?
That's extremely
I love you too.
I asked him to ask me that. My speech didn't really include exactly how to incorporate it into B'nai Akiva, but I think... No, I can't answer the question. I think that essentially it needs to be, as I said to Rafi, needs to be included in shiurim on camp. It needs to be addressed from the outset. It needs to be spoken about at places like Limud and Bayer and on camp, and really kind of addressed. That's it, really. Sorry, Josh. Anybody else?
Bit off topic, but
Please.
in the same way that people say, "Oh, that's so gay," and attach negativity to the words, which shouldn't be the case, it's a similar situation with retarded. So if you're having that discussion with your chanachim, you should also bring in the use of that word.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think it's so important though to see each issue as separate and needing its own kind of proper use of language and approach. I think that it's sometimes positive to group issues together, sometimes it's detrimental to the groups within kind of who we're talking about. So disabled people, LGBT people, some people kind of put women in terms of the kind of lack of rights in Judaism, whatever it is, within the same kind of category. They're not the same things, but I agree, the sensitivity is needed in all areas in life.
First of all, shkuach, really good. Just as a question in terms of the education you're talking about, I know on some camps they've started educating about things like body image and gender equality and those things from quite a young age. What age do you think is appropriate to start teaching about things like homosexuality? I mean, in terms of
I think as we all know, in terms of kind of whatever education we give to children when we're madruchim, you just pitch it to the level that they're at, the appropriate level that they're at. You know, if we kind of desexualize the word gay, it becomes kind of far less scary to talk to 5-year-olds about. You know, if we take the sex out of it, suddenly you can talk to a 10-year-old on camp about a gay couple or a gay madrich or whatever it is. So I think desexualizing it, taking it away, realizing it's not about a sexual relationship, it's about people, emotions, relationships, parents, families. I think then you can kind of bring it into conversation at a much younger age.
Can I just add to that?
Yeah.
Just, from my parental from my parental point of view, I think a big part of it is to kind of create a certain degree of normalcy. And children can grasp concepts if you don't kind of make it into this huge, crazy, big deal. My older daughter Maya notices people of the same sex holding hands in the street, and she asks what's going on. So, some people are born loving people who are the same sex, or whatever, you don't use those words, but they can grasp those concepts from a very, very young age, and it just makes it just a very, very kind of normal thing, and you stop the issue from the onset.
Also, it will help in the future to bring it up earlier. I mean, there are children's books that kind of have gay role models, gay couples, and within them that help kind of people see it not as a thing that's outside of their reality. And just making sure that you're speaking in a way that welcomes and accepts different kind of ways of being in a relationship. Anybody?
Got my own question.
I didn't ask him to say this.
This one isn't his, this is mine. Do you think that actually in the modern world where you have access to all sorts of weird and wonderful things on the internet, it's actually harder to educate children in a positive way about issues that you face and about issues that the community faced in terms of homosexuality and whatever else the issue might be?
In what sense?
In the sense that you can have a share with a bunch of kids and explain to them that it's this way, but actually they'll go back to their dorms or their tents or whatever and go on their phones, and actually what they see is overwhelmingly in the other direction.
Okay. I mean, I think that with every topic and with every issue that kind of we have, when I have children, when I'm having to deal with issues, I have young nephews and nieces, there's always going to be issues about internet and everything like that, and kind of exposing them to different things on the internet. I think nothing can replace a human kind of conversation in terms of these issues. Yes, people learn about things on the internet, but I think the problem is a lot of people hear things, read things, see things on the internet that aren't necessarily true, and seeing the face behind an issue, especially in our community, because yes, there's people who are gay, but people who are Orthodox and gay rarely speak up about it or can speak up about it. So I think just seeing that and discussing with them kind of openly will change the reality in some way and counter what's on the internet, whatever that is. Go on, come on. No? Anyone? I mean, it's fine. I can get home. All right. Yeah. Ollie. Oh, Ollie. Please, sorry. Bit too soon.
Question from someone on the live stream.
Oh, it's like an auction.
Yeah.
What are they bidding?
It's from Anushka Goldman. She asked, please, could you ask how you dealt with homophobia from within your own friendship group? And
Can I ask
if
my
there's a
friend?
way,
Hi guys.
and if there's a way to respond to, well, it's wrong, it's hard to respond without sounding patronising or just a lefty.
Well, that wouldn't be such a terrible thing, would it? But I mean, there's two answers to the question, because I think at different stages of my life there are different ways in which I respond. From kind of 21 onwards, with sarcastic humour mostly, I respond, and it's kind of effective. If you just question people straight, if you just question people straight up about the ridiculousness of their statements, kind of very, very frankly, then they realise that their footing is kind of very unsure. When you're younger, it's far more difficult, and I think that's where the responsibility of madruchim and people kind of in responsible positions need to be making a space that people shouldn't have to deal with that at a young age. And it's the same as any kind of bullying. It needs to be dealt with by making a system that accepts difference. Great. Good question.
Was it been like personally different? Being like the first in like your friendship group or your family to go through this?
Before I came out, really terrible. After I came out, surprisingly good. I mean, and by no means not everyone has the same experience as I did. But I think that it's really important to note that not everyone has the same experience. Not every group of friends will be as accepting. But most people felt comfortable to speak to me and ask questions and discuss, and I was happy to kind of listen to it. But I think that's also an interesting point as well. I think our generation is more accepting in general, and I think the fact that the rabbis of our community and the leaders of our community aren't realizing that the majority of people in this room, it's normal, it's acceptable, it's completely okay, or at least understand the issues kind of deeply. They don't realize that. They think it's kind of the same as where they were at. So that's an issue. But in terms of how my friends reacted and my family, very well. My parents, it took a while. Recently, my extended family found out. But I think it's just about giving them the time they need to understand it, explaining issues, and explaining issues kind of line by line, like this is why this is this, and kind of explaining that everything kind of step by step, and realizing that it took me 21 years to accept it for myself. It's going to take them quite a while to accept it as well, because it's not just about kind of whether they accept people being gay, it's whether it's the people kind of hurting their children or being horrible to them or whatever. Ollie.
Another question from the library. From Jem Silver. She asks, how homosexuality in Judaism is brought up on campus, often within Q&As.
So I didn't hear the beginning of the question.
Sorry, homosexuality on camp. Homosexuality in Judaism is usually brought up on camp within Q&As. And the question usually gets laughed at by the Chanachim and thought of as stupid by the Majachim. And a wish-washy answer is given and the issue is trivialized. How can we improve that on camp?
I think a wishy-washy answer used to be given. I think for the past 3 years since Rob Ari's been here, a less wishy-washy answer has been given. And I think making a share about Judaism and homosexuality, really introducing it into the conversation and making it a normal thing to speak about, will make people talk about it less and laugh about it less. And kids are always going to laugh about anything, with whatever issue it is. But when it's actually addressed properly, and people can say, oh, actually, that's interesting. That's an interesting approach. I haven't had that before. But they make fun of it because the same answer was given for the past 10 years. You know, it was just boring. People didn't want to hear it anymore, including myself.
Point of clarification. You said your parents were against you going to the therapy thing.
Yeah.
Was that for the same reasons that you, in hindsight, are against that same organisation?
Yeah.
Yeah, they just already at that stage wanted you to.
Yeah, I think they were just unsure of it. I was just a bit of a spoiled brat. Like, I just shouted and screamed into life. So that's that. Depiction of myself.
I think maybe one thing that you haven't mentioned is schools.
Schools, yeah.
So you mentioned the A and the rabbinate, but do you think schools are, do you know how much schools are doing? And if you do you know in the right direction, or do you think that they really should be making more drastic steps?
I don't know much about schools because it's been a while since I've been to one. But from what I hear, things are going well. I mean, I know from my own previous school manual, things are being done from discussions I've had with the staff there, and things of developments are happening. I think in other schools as well. But it's not my kind of area of expertise. And I think also within school structures, it's kind of a lot easier, I think, to impose kind of rigid rules about bullying and kind of all these different things in the discussions, because it's kind of adults are running the show. In places where it's young people who are dealing with these issues at the same time as their chanachim, it's much more difficult. So I hope that answers the question in some way. I don't think it did, but...
So somewhat following on from Jeremy's question, if on camp or other situations we're looking to share another talk on this issue, where should we be looking for like inspiration?
Cool.
Jewish sources? Thank you. Should we like Jewish sources, like personal stories stuff, or like what sort of thing?
I have a share on safaria.org. Check it out. It's not very good. But the thing is, you have to think about what approach you're going down. I think that it's always important to find as many sources as possible on the issue and not just think outside the box. So, for example, B'Tselem Elokim is a big issue, as in people don't necessarily talk about it, they kind of ignore it, but it is a kind of discussion topic to be brought up in. And just realizing how, for a shir, realizing how particular the commandment is, and using comparisons. I used the comparison here. I didn't talk so much halacha, but used the comparison of the word to'eva in different situations. Kind of just making people think, answering those questions, and personal stories, people talking about their own experiences, is much more powerful than a shir.
You were speaking about before at your experience in yeshiva. It's like you weren't. I think you said you weren't comfortable coming out in yeshiva. Is the reason was because of the environment you were in, and also was there anyone at yeshiva that you felt comfortable to speak to, but you just wanted because of the environment? And is there a way that can change for people who go to yeshiva for a year because they're in the same gender or midrasha? How can that change in your head?
I think in hindsight, I could have probably told all of the rabbis at Tzvi, but it's a very special place. I don't think every yeshiva is like that. After leaving and speaking to my rabbis that I was close to, they've been fantastic and really interesting, kind of from a halakhic perspective of kind of ways to think about the future in terms of marriage and children, all these different things, which is great for me. In terms of making yeshiva, but I think just the same rules apply. Eretz Tzvi, for example, and it should be an example to kind of all other yeshivas. Not that I am biased, but we had a whole day of shiurim about homosexuality. It was a bit outdated, and I think that they probably developed far more than it was when I was in yeshiva. But it was there. It was a conversation to be had, and clearly the rabbis were willing to talk about it and be there for people who were gay.
In response to Finn's question, you spoke about how sort of in the school structure a teacher is able to reinforce discipline more in terms of their stature.
By no means an educational expert. By no means an educational expert.
Yeah. It shouldn't sort of it's more of a proactive side and being sort of someone relatable that.
Yeah, I think that there's a huge problem that LGBT people within the movement don't feel that they can become madruchim or they can become kind of senior roles within the tenuah, and once that happens, the role models will be there will be role models for people to look at and say, oh, well, he's gay, she's lesbian, if she can do it and be free and be part of the community, she's welcome, then I can too. I think it's about creating. I think they do have far more responsibility than teachers do. I think teachers are can be amazing, but it's not necessarily the place where kids are likely to open up. I think camp is where people are most likely to deal with these issues on the ground. Ollie, another question from online.
Yeah. Samuel Isaac would like to know, were there times you wanted to leave the Orthodox community and did it challenge your faith?
Good question. Yes, and yes. I think people ask this question a lot, and I think everyone in this room probably has had challenges with their faith, and I still have challenges with my faith, and it's an ongoing conversation with all my friends, and it never kind of stops. It's always a discussion, but I've always been very, weirdly committed and passionate about the halakhic system, about Judaism. So it was never necessarily a thought to leave a halakhically observant life, but I have definitely thought about the different strands of Judaism, but they're not. It just wasn't for me. But a lot of people do. I have a number of friends who did leave the Orthodox community, went to Masorti because it's more accepting. They have a form of gay marriage, and it is easier in some ways, and that's not to be thrown out of the window. But that makes sense.
If someone were to come to you and in whatever stage you are in coming out, what would you have to say? What kind of words of inspiration, advice, insight? What would you share with them?
Firstly, I think I'd share that it gets much easier. It gets much better once you get to that point where you begin to accept yourself. Life is so much happier and more fulfilled. And since I came out, my life has honestly changed to the nth degree. Like, just much more fulfilled, succeeding in the things I love, and not having to worry about whether I, looked at a guy for too long, or did this or did that, or someone heard that I was gay, or whatever it was. It's just a huge weight off your shoulders. And secondly, just take your time. There's no right or wrong in terms of coming out, who to come out to first, when to say it, how to say it, whatever it is. Just do what you need to do at the time you need to do it. I think that's.
I know often kind of on camp, some people, when you challenge them just generally on offensive language, they like to define it as a question of their free speech, and etc. How do you kind of respond to that, or what people say we don't mean it that way? Because then it becomes kind of tricky to say like.
I find it difficult to answer that question because it's so charged in political kind of. It's so politically charged in terms of free speech and whatever it is. I just think for me it's just about being a sensitive person and setting up a situation where people feel comfortable to be who they are. And if someone doesn't want to do that, then they have serious problems. Like if you don't want to make someone else comfortable in their own skin, you're purposefully doing something that you think is upsetting them, then I think that's just a problem in that person.
Thank you very much for your speech. I'm just thinking, it's sort of like highlighting an issue, and I was wondering whether you agree. That I find that it's really good that we've started more talking in Orthodox settings, like talking more about LGBT, but it's very often focused on gay men, which might be the patriarchy, I don't know. But I was just wondering, you're taking that and how to include more people within the LGBT community.
Yeah. I completely agree. Like a lot of the groups that are around focus on gay men. A lot of the conversations focus on gay men just because of the text, essentially, and it is very difficult. But I think we have to think about it in terms of just accepting people, anyone who wants to come to the community and connect, and that should be anybody from gay, lesbian, bisexual, or transgender. I can't personally kind of address those issues because I think I have a very different experience, especially someone who's transgender or bisexual. It's extremely different in terms of the experience that they'll have. I think that people just need to make a community that they feel comfortable to speak out, and once they do, people will kind of have more of an opportunity to accept that. Great. All right. Thank you very much.
I just want to thank you, Joe, very much. It's really appreciated to sort of hear these things, and from a sort of an Akiva perspective, I hope that this, when I say I hope, I know that this won't be sort of the end of the conversation, and that this is kind of just a stage in the direction that we need to go in order to create a fully inclusive environment. So thank you very much, Joe, for your words. A few quick announcements before we finish. So this is also it's for everyone, so don't fret. Firstly, next month, 1st of May, on Monday is Yom Ha'atzmaut. So we'll be having our annual celebration in Kinlos. For those of you who don't know, it's a fantastic event where we'll be led by Chazan Johnny Turgle. We'll be joined by the chief rabbi and a top Israeli dignitary who will be addressing the community. It's a fantastic evening, and we're followed by sort of food and dancing, etc. The doors open at 6:30. The evening starts at 7 o'clock. The second announcement, this is for the older Bogrim, is that we have and also the younger ones as well. We have a new program. It's called Kasharim, which has started recently. It is effectively a mentoring scheme where we would like to pair up sort of Majachim who are taking Machanot with Bogrim who have started in their own fields of work, in order to provide them with professional assistance and also to act as role models in order to support them as they go through the process. If anybody is interested, it's not a huge deal of work, it's sort of a phone call here and there and sort of meeting up with someone occasionally. If anybody is interested in taking part in this program, please get in contact and I'll put you through the system. Next up, Machaneh. Machaneh this summer, we have sort of opened up everything, so if any of you want to learn Chanachim who should be coming on camps, it is from the 3rd to the 16th. Tafkidim are also open for all Madrachim. The final thing I want to say is this evening was the first in what we hope will be a series of Leilei Iyun, we'll be focusing on different topics within contemporary Judaism and modern Orthodoxy. So whilst it won't be every week, we actually happen to be having one next week, where it's in the build-up to Pesach. We'll be joined by an organisation called Rene Kassan, who are a Jewish organisation for human rights, where we'll be looking at slavery in context of Pesach. There'll be two parts to the session, where we'll be looking at modern slavery and what that actually means in society today, as well as from a Jewish perspective. And it'll be nice to see as many of you as possible again next week. If you know of anyone else who may be interested, put them in contact, because we'd love to see everyone there. Thank you very much for coming to see you. Joe, thank you, Rabari. Rabari wants to say something quick.
Just before everyone leaves, I asked Joe's permission before, but if anyone is interested in contacting Joe, he's happy to hear from you. He did openly say that he wants your birthday wishes. Happy early birthday. So he's here if you want to kind of take down his details. If you want his details, I'm happy to solicit them. Thank you all very, very much for coming.